summer, I'm Jack and you're watching BTN. Here's what's coming up. We find out about generation restoration, meet kids keeping a language alive, and get a lesson in breakdancing from a soon-to-be Olympian. But first up today to national service. That's when young people have to spend time in the military or doing some other sort of service for their country. And it's been in the news since UK Prime Minister Rishi Sunak promised to bring it back. Here's Sass with more.
Thank you. Imagine you've just turned 18 and along with your presents and cards, you get this. Thank you. This says I have to do national service. Thanks? Well, that's what Britain's Prime Minister Rishi Sunak has proposed for young Brits.
Britain today faces a future that is more dangerous and more divided. That is why we will introduce a bold new model of national service.
The Prime Minister said if he's elected in July, all British teens will spend a year serving their country, either by spending one weekend a month volunteering in the community, helping the National Health Service, police and fire services, or other services and charities, or by spending a year full-time in the armed forces.
Some of it is about utility to the armed forces, that's part of it, but the bulk of this is about helping build a cohesive society where people mix outside their bubble.
Responses to the announcement have been, well, mixed.
I think it's so funny, it's ridiculous.
The kids who are having to go and do it don't even get to vote.
I think it's a good thing, because there isn't a lot of stuff for 18-year-olds to do.
There are practically no exemptions except...
The UK has had a national service scheme before, and if it brought it back, it wouldn't be alone. In fact, 66 countries have some form of a national service, like Sweden, Denmark, Israel, Singapore, Brazil, Cyprus, and South Korea. Yes, even some of your favourite K-pop stars have done their national service. Australia's had national service schemes too, starting way back in the early 1900s when boys were trained at school as cadets and had to register for their local military when they turned 18. In the 50s, all 18-year-old men had to spend around 6 months training with the military, followed by another 5 years in the reserves. Most of that time was spent here in Australia, where some were involved in atomic tests. That scheme ended in 1959, but the government decided to bring it back in the 60s. Australia was involved in conflicts in Vietnam and Borneo and needed soldiers. So all men over the age of 21 were put into a so-called birthday ballot. If your birth date was drawn and you were able to fight, you were forced to join the military. But it was really controversial.
I think it's about time they started thinking about changing the national service laws.
I've missed out on a lot I would have liked to do, as far as being a civilian goes.
Australia ended conscription in 1972 and never brought back national service.
This is it, it's all over. This is the end of national service.
Although debate about it never went away.
The RSL wants a national service training scheme introduced as a way of reducing unemployment.
We would always be willing to consider the introduction of national service.
Some still reckon it's a really good way to give young people new experiences and teach them new skills. And it helps the armed services, which can struggle to find new recruits. And while there are no plans to bring it back in Australia, some say it's not such a terrible idea.
I don't want to scare you, I just want you to have some skill sets.
So what do you think?
I think having a national service might not be the best idea because it will put a lot of pressure on young adults.
I think national service would be good if people had a choice to do it.
If we reintroduce national service to Australia, I would be very scared when it was my turn.
If Australia brought back national service, I would not be very happy about it because I'd have plans for 18.
Donald Trump has been found guilty by a court in New York.
This was a rigged, disgraceful trial.
What crime was he convicted of? Withholding classified documents, falsifying business records, or interfering with an election? He was convicted of 34 counts of falsifying business records.
We arrived at this trial by following the facts and the law.
It's a crime that can be punished by up to 4 years in jail, but the judge hasn't decided on a sentence yet. Mr. Trump is the first ever former US president to be convicted of a crime, and he's still got a few court cases to go.
It's about time he was held accountable for something.
Even if Trump goes to jail, gets out, or gets bail, or whatever, we're all going to vote for Trump still.
What sort of farm product from Victoria has been banned by several countries, including the US and Japan, because of a disease outbreak? Is it beef, eggs, or cheese? It's eggs. Several countries stopped importing Victorian eggs after bird flu was detected on a couple of farms.
For the poultry industry, it's very important that this disease is eradicated.
There are a few different strains of bird flu on the loose, and scientists are particularly worried about one that's killed a lot of birds in Antarctica, although it hasn't been found in Australia. As many as 2 million Aussies may have had their personal information stolen in a cyber attack on a business that sells what sort of product? Mobile phones, insurance, or tickets? It's tickets. A group of hackers known as Shiny Hunters claims to have stolen the details of more than 500 million people around the world who have an account with Ticketmaster, which sells tickets online for gigs, shows, and sporting events. This Monday was Mabo Day, which celebrates the historic 1992 Mabo decision and the man it was named after, Eddie Mabo. It was the court case that paved the way for native title. Let's find out what that is and why it's important. About 270 kilometres northeast of Alice Springs, you'll find Huckitta Station.
This country is for everyone. We can bring our young children into a country, visit country. Got lots of secret side.
It's home to the Amapara, Apichalanam, Anuwawal and Waratara people, who recently, on the banks of the Plenty River, heard something they've been waiting to hear for years.
The court is satisfied that native title exists over the land and waters of the determination area.
The court's decision has been described as the strongest native title claim ever. And it means they will be able to take back full ownership of the land that their ancestors have been living on for thousands of years.
Congratulations to all the native title holders on the long-awaited recognition of your native title rights on Huckitta Station.
We're so happy and proud. Many years we was waiting for this to happen. All our old people passed away. The one was, talking about this country all the time.
Wonderful. Real good. Deadly.
Native title recognises Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islanders' rights to their lands and waters right around Australia. It means traditional owners can fish, hunt and practice ceremonies on their land and even make money from it. And it came about partly thanks to this man, Eddie Koiki Mabo. Eddie was a Meriam man born on the island of Mer, or Murray Island. It's part of the Torres Strait, and his ancestors had lived there for thousands of years. But when British settlers arrived, they declared Mer Island, along with the rest of the country, terra nullius, or empty land, which meant it could be claimed by the British Crown. When Eddie learnt that his people didn't legally own their own land, he decided to do something about it. In the 1980s, he and some fellow Mer Islanders, including his wife Benita, took their case to the highest court in Australia. Over 10 years, they presented evidence proving that Mer Island had never been terra nullius. On the 3rd of June 1992, the High Court made its decision.
The High Court has recognised there were people here and their descendants have rights.
Torres Strait Islanders Australia-wide, particularly the Murray Islanders, are really thrilled with the outcome of the High Court.
Sadly, Eddie died before the decision was made.
He'd be excited. I can't see him talking, I can see him dancing.
The Mabo case led to the Native Title Act of 1993, which has seen thousands of claims around the country. Native title can only be claimed on land that isn't privately owned and isn't being used for other purposes, like government buildings. And traditional owners have to prove their use of and relationship to the land hasn't changed. And that's exactly what the owners of Huckitta Station did. While this decision doesn't change their relationship to the land, It's a recognition that it always has been and always will be theirs. What court was the Mabo decision made in? The Federal Court, the Supreme Court, or the High Court? It was the High Court, which is the highest court in Australia.
We're watching BTN from Random Public School.
Now to Generation Restoration, which is the theme of this year's World Environment Day. It's a call to people around the world, particularly young people, to be part of the generation that saves the planet by restoring ecosystems. Here's Michelle to explain.
At Coromandel Valley Primary School in South Australia, these guys are getting their hands dirty.
We are in the YELP group, the Youth Environmental Leadership Group. We are trying to work on improving the growth of the area.
Have you planted some other plants around here?
Yeah, some of them, like I called that one there Rosie, and there's one up there called Spider. And jelly and ice cream. We're gonna call this one Bob. Yeah.
Bob?
Yeah.
Yeah, nice.
We were doing this because when we made this path, we had to chop down all the trees and break down all the bushes.
Yep, we humans have had a big impact on the planet. If you look around, it might be hard to imagine what our environments might have looked like before we started to change them. Over the last few centuries, we've seen massive changes to forests, grasslands, frozen tundra, deserts, lakes, rivers and oceans, all of the Earth's ecosystems.
An ecosystem is really the combination of all the plants, all the vegetation, but also all the animals, all the birds, all of the aspects of life within a natural system. Important natural ecosystems have been suffering from land clearing, from agriculture, from cities, from urbanisation, building bigger cities.
This is David Crowley, and he's a climate change expert, in case you couldn't tell by his t-shirt.
But it's essentially a metaphor of the damage that is due to global warming.
David says the Earth is struggling to cope with all the changes we're making. It takes 1.5 years to generate the resources that the human population uses in only 1 year. And the UN says that 75% of the Earth's land surface and 66% of ocean areas have been seriously impacted by human actions and activities. And 1 million species of plants and animals are facing the threat of extinction, mainly because their habitats have been destroyed. So that's the bad news. But the good news is the changes can go the other way too.
The degradation of these ecosystems can be reversed. And that's the focus of World Environment Day this year.
Restore my lands for future generations. Generation restoration begins with you.
Scientists say that by restoring only 15% of ecosystems, we could reduce animal and plant extinctions by 60%. And there is good work happening all around the world, where people are working to restore native environments, replanting forests, restoring reefs and repopulating animals. Restoration can also mean bringing in better farming practices and even creating greener cities and biodiverse backyards. David says nature is actually pretty good at recovering when it's given a chance.
It's remarkable, even in COVID, when we stopped having as much traffic, there were many plants that essentially regrew again around some city areas, on some farms, and around some roads.
And he says restoring ecosystems is essential if we want to keep global warming below 2 degrees.
And there's only one proven 1,000-year-old technology that removes carbon dioxide from the atmosphere, and it's trees and plants that suck carbon dioxide out of the atmosphere. And you can do that in schools or even at home in your gardens. By planting more trees and planting more plants, you can get more insects, more butterflies, more birds, and also more space for native animals.
So we want to plant more native plants to attract more native animals like koalas, rosellas,
and like all the different pollinators, and if we're lucky, maybe some blue-banded bees.
So that the native animals don't get extinct for the future generations.
Which type of ecosystem can not be found on mainland Australia? A savanna, a tundra, or a desert? It's a tundra, which is a very cold region with no trees and little rainfall, kind of like a frozen desert. The only Australian tundra are on islands in the sub-Antarctic. Next up, we're going to meet some kids in WA who are helping to preserve a very rare language. There are only 3 people in the world who speak and understand Ngalia, and they're passing it on to students through an app that tells the story of the Mamujitji. Here's Sass.
What these students are up to might not look that out of the ordinary, but in fact they're doing something that no other kids in the world are doing. They've been chosen to test out an app called Mamujitji Story.
So the app we've designed is based on a Dreamtime story, which we've held and known about since I was a child, and it's been part of our language group for thousands of years.
The Mamujitji Story is about hairy creatures called Mamu and the kids who stood up to them, which became little insects which we call Mamujitji or antlions.
Well, the app is to bring this Dreamtime story into our contemporary experience and understanding, so that people now can actually experience what I have experienced as a child growing up in the bush.
It's a way to teach kids about science while connecting with their culture.
When there's been lots of rain, we go out bush and we look at what some pathways.
It is important to go back because there's lots of education in Yanang way, in Western way, so we still need children to learn both ways, in our ways too.
But the app is also really important because it uses both English and Ngalia, an Indigenous language that only 3 people in the whole world still speak and understand. One of those speakers is the app's creator, Kato Muir.
It's very important to me, the work that my parents, who've now passed on, have done. My brothers and I are carrying on that tradition today.
There are more than 250 Indigenous languages in Australia, including around 800 dialects that have been spoken for tens of thousands of years. There used to be even more languages, but after colonisation, many were lost. Government policies split up family groups, and in many cases, First Nations people were discouraged or even banned from speaking their language. Today, around 90% of surviving Indigenous languages are considered critically endangered, which means not many people speak them, and there's a danger of them disappearing. Which is why a lot of people around Australia are working to make sure that doesn't happen. And young people are playing a huge role in that.
Welcome to Ghana with Tiana.
Online, at home, and in classrooms. Just by learning, these kids are making sure that languages like Ngalia survive and can be taught to kids in the future.
We need that more in school so kids could learn in both worlds, English and language. And language is important too.
Madrid have won the Champions League title for a record-breaking 15th time.
It's their trophy again.
After a 2-0 win against German side Borussia Dortmund, Spanish champs Real Madrid have once again won world football's biggest club competition, the European Champions League. Madrid now holds the title for, well, having the most titles. They have won the Champions League more than any other team. And yeah, they're pretty stoked. Speaking of Madrid, And winners, Australia has won the Women's World Rugby 7 Series and a crushing defeat of France in Madrid.
Australia champions in Madrid!
All eyes were on Madison Levy, who scored a whopping 13 of Australia's 21 tries in the series, including 3 hat-tricks in 5 games.
Simply superb!
And finally, to the World Surf League in Hawaii, where Brazilian surfer Tatiana Weston Webb has just made history as the first woman to achieve a perfect 10 at Teahupo'o.
A deep one for Weston Webb, she comes out.
For years, only men were allowed to surf at this beach in Tahiti because it was considered too dangerous for women. So Tatiana's achievement is a pretty big deal.
Finally today, we're going to meet a teenager who's going to be one of the first people ever to represent Australia in Olympic breakdancing. The sport will make its debut in the Paris Games and Jeff Dunn will be there as part of Team Australia. Here he is to tell you more about how he got there and why he loves breaking.
50% of breaking is mental. You're meant to be the intimidator, not be intimidated. You don't want to look like you're thinking about what you're doing. So once you get over that mental game and have that mental toughness, you'll be fine. I am 16 years old and I live in northern New South Wales. I was 7 years old when I properly started breaking. It did feel extremely natural to me. I just found this odd sense of joy in this kind of dance. So that is an air flare. I'm jumping from one hand and then reaching across to the other while spinning. And so this took me a year or so to do it. Breaking has been around forever. It originated in the New York Bronx with a bunch of African Americans on the streets learning how to incorporate, I think, house dance and ballet and gymnastics and all that. Got really big in the early 2000s, you would have seen certain breaking moves in Step Up. I reckon after the Olympics it's gonna blow up again. Breaking is a extremely difficult high-level art form. You have so many movements that require so much strength, flexibility, mobility, and high-intensity core work. But at the same time, you have to make that look extremely cool or artistic or beautiful. Most people know breaking for all the power moves, so all the head spins and the spinning on your hands and all the air tricks and all that and all the flips. But breaking is really all about the originality of someone and the style and the presence. It started getting pretty serious when the Olympics was announced.
One Oceania representative will be in Paris 2024 for breaking. See you in Paris 2024.
This is the very first time that breaking will be in the Olympics. So we have a great duty in order to make breaking look cool to the world. I feel extremely honored and proud to be not only representing breaking, but Australia and my family and my crew. I feel honored to be able to show what breaking really is. I'm just gonna keep on training and hopefully I'll get that gold.
Well, that's it for today, but we'll be back before you know it. And if you miss us in the meantime, you can jump online and check out more stories and specials and quizzes and resources for your teachers. BTN Newsbreak will also be here every weeknight to keep you up to date. See you next time. Bye-bye.